For too long, weak leadership has left our borders wide open, flooding our communities with drugs, human trafficking, and violent criminals. Well, those days are over. Under President Trump, we are defending American families and restoring their safety. If you try to enter illegally, you will be caught, you will be removed, and you will never return. Follow the law, and you'll find opportunity. If you break it, you'll find consequences. Strong borders mean a stronger America. President Trump is making America safe again.
All right, everybody. Look who we have on stage with us at CPAC. Let me tell you, this is a great honor. I think one of the most powerful women in our U.S. government right now, Secretary Kristi Noem, our Secretary of Homeland Security. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be with you.
Apparently, we were supposed to deport Mike Rowe and Matt Schlapp. So.
Yes, I have just issued a warrant for Mike Rowe.
Right, okay.
So
be on alert,
thank him for being here tonight, and we'll next see his face on a wanted poster.
Okay.
Too long.
So let me ask you this. That was one of the best ads. So powerful. Tell us about this multi-million-dollar ad that you have going on. Why was it important to send this message out to individuals who have no business being in our country?
Well, you know, it's interesting. After I was nominated and to be the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, President Trump talked to me several times. We had several meetings during the transition talking about it. And he said to me one day, we had a meeting, I left his office, and then Natalie came chasing me down the hall, and she goes, the president wants to tell you something he forgot to visit with you about. So I came back into his office, and he said, Kristi, do you know those ads that you did in South Dakota?
Oh,
and
yes,
I said,
yes,
sir. You mean my Freedom Works Here ads? And he said, yeah, those ones where those beautiful ads, those beautiful ads you did about South Dakota. They had Mount Rushmore, all those things. He said, I want you to do those for the border.
Brilliant.
And I said, well, sir, I don't know how that works. You mean the ones where I was a plumber and where I was an electrician? And I don't know if I can do those for the border. And he said, no, I want you to do those for the border. And I want you to do those everywhere, not just in the United States, but I want them around the world. I want you to tell people not to come to this country if they're going to come here illegally. And I said, well, sir, we can do press conferences. You know, we can tell people what we're doing. And he said, nope, we're not going to let the media tell this story because the media will never tell the truth. We're going to do a marketing campaign to make sure the American people know the truth of what you're doing. And I said, well, sir, do you want to be in those ads? And he said, nope. I want you to do them.
No?
He said, no, I don't. I want you in the ads. He said, I want you in the ads and I want your face in the ads. But he said, but I want the first ad, I want you to thank me. So I want you to thank me for closing the border. And I said, yes, sir, I will thank you for closing the border. So if you notice in that ad, we thanked him for closing the border. And then, you know, there's strong language in those ads. Those ads talk about, we will hunt you down. And that if you come to this country, that you will not get the chance to return. If you leave voluntarily, you may have the opportunity to have the American dream. But if we have to come looking for you and hunt you down, then you have lost that chance. And I don't think there's ever been a secretary that has said that before, much less a president. And these ads are running not just in the United States. They're going to run in the Middle East. They're going to run in Central America. They're going to run throughout the world, letting the world know that America has a new leader.
I mean, because you're talking about over, individuals coming to our country illegally over, 100 countries, 140 countries. So let me ask you this. That first week after you were confirmed, well, before we even go there, you got to give us the backstory, how President Trump said, okay, you're my pick for Homeland Security. Because we were, when we were all out there going, okay, what is Governor Kristi Noem, what is she going to be? Secretary of Ag, Secretary of Interior, and then it was Secretary of Homeland Security. Tell us that backstory.
No, it's kind of an interesting story because my husband and I had talked during, after the election, if we get asked to do something, what would you do?
Right.
And I said, well, people have mentioned, do you want to do agriculture? Would you be interested in interior? And my husband and I talked about it. And when you live in South Dakota, you live a pretty special life. And we've got kids and we've got grandchildren. We live on a ranch. I'm an outdoors person. And I said, listen, I'm not really interested in leaving the governorship in South Dakota unless I'm doing something that's significant.
Right.
And he said, well, what is significant to you? And I said, well, it would be the president's #1 priority. And he said, well, my husband said, well, what is that? And I said, well, it's the border and immigration. So it would be Homeland Security would be what I would need to ask for. And he said, okay, that is every dysfunctional agency in the federal government
That's
is
right.
in Homeland Security. And he said, well, that would be consistent because as long as I've been married to you, whatever it is, if there could be 3 choices, you always pick the hardest thing to do.
Right.
So he said, that makes sense that you would ask for that. And I said, well, nobody is even considering me for Homeland Security, so this will be a big surprise. So the first person I visited about it with was Howard Lutnick, who was facilitating a lot of things in the transition and asked me what I'd be interested in. He was shocked by that. And then one day, I mentioned it to President Trump when he called me on the phone and asked me, had a conversation. I said, sir, not only do you need to close the border and make sure that we're deporting people by the millions, which he has talked about and promised the American people, you need somebody that is tough enough to actually do it. This is not going to be a 6-month job. This is going to be a job to deport that many people and to add some integrity back to our federal laws. It's going to take a long time. And you need somebody who can message that, but who is actually strong enough to do it. And I couldn't think of anybody else that I knew of that would actually do what the president was saying he was going to do.
Right.
And I told the president, I said, when you talk about this, I also think it's extremely beneficial for you to have someone who's messaging this to the American people that is a mom.
Yeah.
That's a grandma that recognizes that there's a human side to this.
There's human side to it, and it's public safety, because what do parents want to do? They want to protect their families, their children.
Yes, and this is about our country and adding safety back to our country and making sure that Americans are put first. And yes, we understand that there's people that will be impacted and families that will be impacted, and we're going to handle this in a way that America always does. We're going to do it with excellence, but we're going to do the right thing.
Right.
And we're going to make sure we follow through on what the president promised. So I think he was excited about that, but what was so interesting to me was one day Howard called me and he said, can you get to Mar-a-Lago by 2 o'clock this afternoon? And I said...
Wait, from South Dakota?
Yeah, I said...
That's a little
challenging. I'm in South Dakota, and that's impossible.
Right.
So I said, I don't know if I can. And I said, I'll do anything I can. He said, well, I'm going to try to fit you into the president's schedule, but I'm not sure, if I can, but if there's an extra moment, I want to put you in front of him today. I broke my back to get there. Like, I took every flight possible and figured it out. Walked in the door of Mar-a-Lago at 4:30 in the afternoon, 2.5 hours late, and Howard walked out and he said, the president just left. And I said, you're kidding me. He said, no. And I said, all right. And he said, well, do you want to come have dinner with me tonight and my son? And I said, sure, I can do that. So went to dinner with Howard and his son. We're sitting there talking, and Howard's phone rings. Meanwhile, Howard shows me where they're doing interviews for cabinet positions. He walked me into a room that was a long table with dozens of TV screens and a long table with a chair sitting at the end. And he said, this is where people who get interviewed sit. This table is filled with national security experts, people that will interview you. They will be Zooming in from all over the country and the world.
No pressure.
People who understand Homeland Security, all the agencies, and we will interview you and ask you questions for... I said, well, how long does that take? And he said, probably about an hour and a half, or take 2 hours, or if you're really bad, it could take 10 minutes. So that was the first time I started to get nervous, because I had not prepared for something like that.
Right.
We did this. He showed me all of that. Then we left and went to dinner. We're sitting at dinner, and Howard's phone rings. And I hear Howard say, yes, Mr. President. Yes, I like her too. Is that what you want to do? Is that okay? Yes, sir. I think she'd be fantastic. Okay, well then go ahead and do that. And he hangs up the phone. And I'm sorry, I'm going to use some colorful language here, but Howard turns to me and he said, what the fuck just happened? and looked at me like he was mad. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, the president just called me and said he's going to make you the Homeland Security Secretary. And I said... So he repeated his question. He said, what the F just happened? And I said, I have no idea. And he was You know, because for Howard, he follows this process. Everybody gets interviewed. This is how we do things. And the president had just hijacked it. And my phone rang like 30 seconds later, and it was the president. And he said, Kristi, I'm wondering if you would be interested in being my Homeland Security Secretary. You know, would you be willing to do that? And I said, yes, sir. Thank you very much. Yes, I'll do a very good job. He said, okay, I'm excited. Thank you. We had a nice conversation, hung up. You know, and Howard stood up and congratulated me and hugged me, and all of that was done. And we talked, but then when we left that evening, I got back to my hotel room and I called my husband, and I said, well, this was weird how all this just happened because, oh, and the president said on the phone, he said, where are you tonight? And I said, I'm in Palm Beach. He goes, you're in Palm Beach? What are you doing in Palm Beach? And I said, well, Howard called me to come down here. And he said, Howard called you to come to Palm Beach? And he said, well, where are you now? I said, I'm having dinner with Howard. And he goes, put me on the phone with Howard. He said to Howard, why are you having dinner with Kristi Noem? And Howard said, well, you finally picked a good-looking cabinet secretary, so I'm not a dummy. Me and my son took her out for dinner. But what I told my husband that night on the phone is I said, here's what was interesting about that experience for me was that I feel like God facilitated that whole day because I went to Mar-a-Lago and I had to see what every other cabinet secretary had to go through to get a position. I had to see how they were interrogated, how they had to be prepared for their position that they were going to be taking on and everything. And then God said, but I'm not going to make you do that. It almost felt to me like it was God confirming to me how strong he had placed on my heart that this was the job I was supposed to have. He wanted me to know what was required of everybody, but I'm not going to make you do that. This is something that you're going to do because I have the confidence you can do it. And the president had the confidence to give it to me. So it was a very special day for me.
Amazing. So I loved it. The first week after you were confirmed, you're dressed up so cool, going up, busting up the illegal aliens up in New York, then heading down to the border while let's see, who is that secretary? Oh, Alejandro Mayorkas. You know Alejandro Mayorkas? The guy who sat behind his desk that I don't think even barely visited the border? Yeah, loser. So here's the deal. You've got Secretary Noem. She goes out nonstop. Tell us about what you saw as you were going to New York when you went to the border. Tell us what you saw on the ground.
Well, I don't believe I can really know what my agencies are doing unless what I know what the people on the front lines are doing and what they go through every day. And frankly, for the agencies in Border Patrol and in ICE, TSA, all these different agencies, I have FEMA, we have a huge recruitment issue, especially in Border Patrol and ICE. The morale is at the lowest it probably had ever been because you had people that signed up for a job that weren't being allowed the last 4 years to do their jobs.
Right.
So for me to go there and spend time with them was important. But the morning that we went to New York City, I left my apartment at 1:30 in the morning, went to the airport, got on a flight, got to New York City. We had a briefing at 3 o'clock with about the 75 to 100 enforcement officers that were going to go out and run ops that morning. And these were different agencies partnering, the DEA, ATF, ICE, HSI. And we were going out and we had warrants on quite a few people, but they were very dangerous. People that had warrants for murder, assault, drug, and human trafficking. And we're going to be going out. And the reason that we were going out at night was because that's when people were off the streets. It would be safe situations.
Right.
They would be at home, and we'd be able to go sweep them up and take them in and be able to process them and get them incarcerated. So what was interesting to me was, you know, we got there and immediately the HSI officer said, do you want to get in the Bearcat with us to go do this operation? I said, absolutely. Like, yes, I do. And they said, and then I have Secret Service detail, and they said, no, she's not. And I go, yeah, yes, I am. They said, no, we recommend, ma'am, that you not get in there because that's just not safe. And so when they were visiting with somebody else, I got in the Bearcat with the HSI guys and got in the front, and we went out to do the op. But what was interesting to me is how professional these individuals are and how much they were working to get these bad people out of these apartments that were filled with people who were trafficking drugs and human beings. We were in the Bronx. They were operating with professionalism. I had spent probably several hours the night before on the phone with the mayor of New York City, with NYPD, trying to get them to facilitate some backup for us.
Right.
And a lot of phone calls talking to people that, frankly, they said they'd never heard from the Secretary of Homeland Security before, much less did they dream they would have a secretary helping to coordinate the safety of law enforcement officers. But this is what I think everybody needs to know, is that as those ops were happening, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and we're continuing to pull these guys in. They're members of TDA. The one guy we pulled in was one of the ringleaders that you saw on the videos coming out of Aurora, Colorado. So that was one of the guys that we went and got, and he had just tried to purchase grenades that week and a gun buy. And I don't have any idea why you would need grenades in the United States of America.
Right.
And this individual came out of an apartment building, and as we're bringing him out, people walking by on the streets were walking by me and walking by our law enforcement officials and saying, thank you so much. And these community members, whatever you hear on the news, or ever how much time CNN or MSNBC or the liars on the network TVs make it sound like we're going after these poor innocent individuals, the people who have to live in the communities with these individuals, they are walking their children to school, and they're walking by us and saying, thank you. Thank you for being here and for doing this and getting these bad dudes off our streets.
And you know what was so pathetic, Madam Secretary? That the media was more concerned about what you were wearing than what you were doing.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
Well, we were so busy the first few days, I didn't realize people were making fun of me until several days later.
You know what it is? They're jealous of you.
Well,
for sure.
I gotta tell you, when you're hanging out with guys with big guns and vests and stuff, it's not a bad day. That's kind of right up my alley. But the other thing that was important to me is they would, like, Border Patrol gave me their hat and their coat, and they wanted me to wear it and be proud of them.
Yes.
So when I wear their hats and their coats, and of course the vest was there for safety reasons, they know that I'm proud of them, and I'm proud of the job that they're doing. And I'll tell you, recruitment for Border Patrol is through the roof in the last 30 days. People want to be Border Patrol agents now. That's a complete change under this administration. Truly
amazing. You've also got DOGE basically coming into the Department of Homeland Security. What are you seeing there? What are you looking to eliminate? What are you looking to fix? What are you looking to innovate in the Homeland Security Department?
Well, I've placed my order for chainsaws.
Oh, okay.
So
okay. Wait, we might be able to find one around here. I don't know.
I gotta tell you, there's something powerful. If you don't own a chainsaw, go buy one, first of all. I'll never forget when I got my first chainsaw. I kind of just walked around the ranch and thought, what can I cut now? So if you haven't had one, they really are fantastic. But the DOGE guys have been extremely powerful. I can't tell you how thankful I am for them every day, because they're going in and digging out not just wasteful spending, but also wasteful positions that don't need to be there anymore. A lot of times over the years, people have looked to the federal government to be the answer to their problems. And the DOGE guys are helping us teach the American people that the federal government is not the answer.
Yeah.
That the federal government many times is not the answer to the problems that they have. We're going back to what I want to add as an element of education in this country about our founders envisioned exactly what the DOGE guys are doing. They envisioned that the federal government would not be powerful. They would not be the source of authority and governance and founding, that it would be the states and the local entities that would do that. And so when they come forward with an idea in Homeland Security, I love it, because they have had the time to root out something we shouldn't be doing. And I look back at exactly what Reaganism was, what federalism was, and show that they're giving me an opportunity to return our country back to that. In fact, when the CBP One app, do you guys remember the conversation about the CBP One app that Biden had set up that facilitated allowing people to come into our country illegally? Well, we shut that down on day one. And didn't want it to be utilized anymore. But we needed some kind of a app to be established, because we are in control of all the border, not just the border, but the customs and trade that goes through the country. So anything that comes through a port or a package or comes through the country, I'm responsible for.
Right.
And so typically we need an app that we can use for offshore shipping containers that are coming in, that they can fill out the paperwork before they hit the port so we can be efficient. And in talking to individuals within the federal government, they said, you know what? We can build that app for you. We can build that technology for you. Just give us 4 months and we'll have that done. And so I called the DOJ guys, called Kyle, who's assigned to the Department of Homeland Security, and he said, we can have that up in 24 hours. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You are fantastic.
Yes.
So now we have CBP One or CBP Go, which is the app that we use for trade, has nothing to do and doesn't facilitate any kind of asylum or illegal entry into the country. It helps us make sure that we're able to do trade and make sure that we're collecting the tariffs that President Trump talks about so much, and doing it in a way with an app that the DOJ guys helped us develop in 24 hours and didn't have to wait 4 months for it to get done.
So I do want to ask you this. At CPAC, we have our CPAC Center for Combating Human Trafficking. This is a big issue for many of our investors, the people who really understand this horrific humanitarian crisis that we've seen. I know for you, I mean, your children, your grandchildren, I mean, it is heart-wrenching to hear these stories, to hear about the missing children, to hear about the incompetence of the former administration that have led to so many children that we have no idea where they are. Give us an update on that situation.
Yeah, so we have, what cartels were doing was not only were they trafficking individuals, but they were recycling children in order to facilitate it. To cross the border, they would bring a child with them, knowing the Biden administration would let the entire group into the country then and release them immediately on parole if they had a child with them. And then those cartel members would send the same child back over the border back south and bring them through with another group. And because the Biden administration had stopped doing any kind of DNA testing in individuals, they were able to utilize that. We immediately required DNA testing again.
Perfect.
And the number one thing that happens so often is that these families that come across aren't families at all. They're individuals who are using these children to get across the border and trafficking them and handing them off to someone else into this country to abuse them. And the Office of Refugee Resettlement is one of the biggest abusers of putting people in positions and facilitating trafficking, and where we put these people in supposed safe homes that we've been able to stop just through DNA samples of children and tracking to make sure they belong with the people that they belong with, and then when they're not, to make sure that we're taking them out and getting them into safe situations, returning them back to their families. And that's the heart side of this that nobody talks about with our president. We have the biggest president. I mean, he's the biggest badass we've ever had, right? As far as a president that this country's ever seen, that the world has ever seen. And now he's come into this presidency with the confidence and to go in and to do things and do them right, and to make sure that he has a team around him that will go to the mat every single time too. But if you watch him, he's doing it, and he's doing it for the next generation and for our kids.
Yes.
And he's doing it for the children of the world, and making sure we're doing these policies that will make sure that trafficking is addressed, and partnering with our states and our attorney generals to make sure that it's addressed as well.
And we look forward to partnering with you as well. I do want to wrap up with this one question. You just had a grandbaby 2 weeks ago.
I did.
What's her name?
Her name is Noem, and Noem means peace and rest. And so that is exactly what I think our country needs to embrace right now, is that we're in this period of, yes, thank you. That's my 4th grandbaby. Yes, so I've got 3 girls and a boy right now, and they're all under the age of 4. But Noem is my middle name, so I'm kind of excited about the fact that I've got a little girl in the family that's carrying on my middle name too. But we're so excited. This is my middle daughter, Kennedy, that had her first grandbaby, and they're doing really well. So I was pretty thankful I got to be there when she was born and stick around for a few days and make sure that Grandma was going to be her best friend.
Amazing. I do want to say last thoughts here for our CPAC audience, as you're really taking on this job, this very, very tough job, and we, of course, are praying for you and your ability to get it done, and I know you're going to be so successful in this. But tell us just final thoughts for our audience.
You know, what I would say is everything in your life, you're formed by the people you spend time with. So growing up, I spent every day with my dad. He was my best friend. So people ask me, you know, why I do what I do. And it is because my dad taught me that when I die, I should at least be able to look back and say, I lived a life of significance, that it mattered. So I had kind of a crazy dad. He was a cowboy. So he was the one that woke us up every day. I think I've probably said it to the CPAC crowd before. Every day by yelling up the stairs, get up. More people die in bed than anywhere else. So I always wondered if that was true, but it maybe is. So it's a good reason to get out of bed in the morning. But he also sent us out the door every day as kids saying, drive fast and take chances. But
I like that.
Again, that's strange for a father to recommend. But what has taught me is I'm not a feminist. I was raised by a dad who made us strong as girls, and I was raised in a family where girls could do anything that boys could do. But I also think that, you know, one of the books that impacted my life the most was a book that talked about how we talk to our children and how the words that we say to our children matter, and it forms who they are when they grow up. And it talked about how even our fairy tales many times are written in a way to define roles. And it talked about the fairy tale of Little Red Riding Hood. How even in Little Red Riding Hood, if you remember the story, it was she was going to Grandma's house, and if she stayed on the path, she would be safe. But it was off the path where all the risks were, and the danger was, and the wolf, and that if you stayed on the path, you'd be fine. And really the message of the fairy tale was stay on the path and don't take risks. And the message of that fairy tale was, if you were a little girl, many times to get to Grandma's house safely, right? But one of the things that book and the message that it had was that they wished every little girl would grow up knowing that they were never Little Miss Riding Hood, that they were always the wolf. And that's what I think we need to think about right now in this country, is we should not wake up every day with a victim mentality, a defeatist mentality, that we have these huge challenges in front of us. Our president doesn't. Our president wakes up every day knowing he's the greatest president of all time, right? He knows that. And we should wake up with the confidence that we don't have to live in fear of straying off the path. We should look for opportunities to get off the path, because every opportunity in my life has come to me because I've taken a risk, because I've been willing to put myself out there and do something different. And I'll be the wolf. I'll be the wolf if I need to. I'll be the one out there that is making sure that we have those opportunities and those challenges and placing them in front of other people so that they really go after the biggest opportunities that are out there. And that I hope we pass that on to our kids and our grandkids. We are saving this country for a reason.
That's right.
We are saving it for our kids and our grandkids. And that's why I do my job, and I hope that's why you're here tonight. I know that's why Matt and Mercedes do what they do. They don't do this for themselves or so you can come and have a fun few days with people. They're doing it because we don't want people to forget what America's about.
Amen.
America was created by individuals who made huge sacrifices for us, and we shouldn't lose it on our watch. Remember our history, gather together, and then go out and fight and make sure that we're taking charge of those opportunities that are in front of us. So God bless you for what you do and letting me come and visit with you.
Oh,
it's
how
been wonderful.
Incredible, Madam Secretary Kristi Noem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Hopefully I didn't talk too long.
You were awesome. I loved it.